and welcome to Our People, the podcast where we give space for Holdeman Stories. We focus on hope, healing, and inspiration. Connection, consciousness, and love are the driving motivations for this project. Remember to have grace for those who have chosen to speak out and share their experience. Please enjoy the story you will hear today. Welcome to Our People, the podcast where we make room for ex-Mennonite people to tell their stories, ex-Holdeman's people. I'm Waylon. I'm here today with Barb. Barb, go ahead and tell us what you want us to know about you.
Well, like you said, my name is Barb. My parents grew up in the Holdeman Church. Both of them did, although neither one of my grandfathers belonged to church at any time until my maternal grandfather was like 90 some years old, and he finally joined church, which, harkens back to the fact that they tell you if you know about their religion and you don't subscribe to it, that you're going to hell. That tells you how deep that indoctrination goes, that my grandpa at 90 years old decided, hey, I better join church so I can get to heaven, and then my paternal grandfather never joined, but both of my grandmas did. So the way I grew up from birth until I was 10, my mom and dad were not in church. My mom had joined church before I was born. This is the way I understand it and what I recall. But my dad never did. So she felt bad being in church, and then going home and having a TV, having a radio, all that stuff my dad had. So she asked to be excommunicated, which they did. And then her and dad joined when I was 10, along with my older sister who was 16. I have two older brothers. Both of my brothers were grown up and out of the home before mom and dad joined church. So it was my older sister, me, and my little sister. I was 10, and for whatever reason in this world, they let a 10-year-old girl join that church, not knowing that if I decided in a few years this is not the life I want, which happened, how much trauma it would cause me to leave. And I hold a lot of anger, not only towards the preachers, the deacons, but also my parents, which I'm working through, because they knew if I decided this wasn't for me, what would happen. They knew. And as it turned out, I decided when I was probably 14 when I decided that life wasn't for me. So I'd been a Mennonite for maybe 4 years before I was like, hey, I don't like this. And I made it to 16, at which time they put me on repentance when I was 16. They wouldn't expel me until I was 18. So I turned 18, October 13th. They expelled me like November 2nd or 3rd, something like that. So it was very shortly after I turned 18. They kicked me out. It was awful. It was traumatic. My parents were devastated. I was elated. I couldn't wait to get out of there, but my parents were devastated. I'll never understand why they let a 10-year-old girl make that kind of a decision that affected the rest of her life. I will never understand it. As soon as they baptized me, I don't know if everybody listening will know, but you get baptized with just a trickle of water on your head. You tell your experience, you do all that stuff, and then you get up, and this was my first experience with the holy kiss. The preacher's wife, the preacher was probably, at 10, I thought he was ancient, but he was probably mid 50s at the time, which was his wife would have been too. And so I had to, at 10 years old, after getting up in front of a group of 200 people and telling my experience, which was nothing, I don't even remember it. Then I had to kiss an old lady. I was, 11 or 12 the first time we had communion in the Fairview church, because Fairview church was a bad church. We were full of heathens and sin, and rarely did we get to go to communion. So the first time I went to communion, I was 11 or 12. And it traumatized me enough to say, I will never be that holy again. Never again. Am I going to be a good enough Christian to partake in that? And I made sure I wasn't. I never went to another communion for the rest of the time. The 7-8 years that I had left in the church, I never did do it again. I think once I got expelled out of church, I went insane. I dated a boy for a while, and once we broke up, I was out of this world. I spent my 20s drunk. I was a maniac. I would do anything with anybody. I would go anywhere. I stole, I drank, I smoked weed. I did all the fun stuff that they told me I couldn't do. I went out and did it. And I went out with the mindset. Okay, just to back up. When they expel you, I don't know what your experience was, Waylon. But I know when they expelled me, they get up in front of church and they tell all about your supposed sins, which it wasn't a sin. I was a normal teenage girl. I had a boyfriend. We kissed. That was it. I was too scared to do anything but kiss. So it was just, a makeout session here and there. So they tell all your sins in front of church. They take a vote, who agrees to that this girl is, no longer one of us. And of course, everybody's going to raise their hand, because if they don't, guess what? You're next on the chopping block. So you better fall in line and agree with us. So everybody raised their hand. And I know this because my cousins were there and they told me firsthand account of how this all went down. They expel you, they tell your sins, take a vote, yes, she needs to be gone, blah, blah, blah. And then they quite literally say, we hand this girl, guy, whoever, soul over to Satan to do with as he wishes. Now, I'm not a big believer. I don't believe at all, actually, that anybody has control over my soul. Nobody. That is something that is between me and my beliefs. It has nothing to do with the Holdemans or the Baptist or anybody. Nobody can tell me what to do with my own soul. But I am a huge, huge believer in the power of the spoken word. Now, when you say something like that, I don't even believe in Satan anymore in my life, in my personal life. But at that time I did. So you're telling an 18-year-old girl that's known nothing but hellfire sermons, you're not worthy. You were born sinful. Don't trust your heart. Don't lean into your own understanding. You take a girl 18 that's been told that her entire life, and you toss her out and tell her Satan can have her soul. Did that play into all of the, because I got to that point where I was like, well, I'm going to hell anyway. Let's make this ride worth it. And I did. I was an awful human being for quite a few years. I didn't care who I hurt. I didn't care that I hurt my parents. I didn't care that I was affecting my future. I didn't care. Because why would I? I'm going to hell anyway. What's it matter? Sorry, it tears me up because it's such a waste of life for me. And as you can tell, it's still affecting me to this day. I still fight with feeling unworthy, with feeling unlovable. And I know sensibly, I know in my head that's not true. But once you've been told that over and over and over, that's one of the things I'm still healing from, is to kind of reteach myself that I am lovable and I am worthy. Right. And I have 2 kids that I have instilled that into, and that is my biggest accolade of my life, is that I raised 2 children far, far, far away from that line of thinking. They know their worth. They know they're worthy. I'll never forget the time I had my first panic attack. I was probably 11 or 12, and we were having revivals. And of course, it was one of those, They do the hellfire and brimstone sermon, then they do the invitation song. And I hadn't stood up, and my parents were upset with me, and because they knew Barb was a sinful girl. She needed to get her life in order at 12 years old. Come on. What did I do? Anyway, we went to my uncle's house after this sermon and everything, and they discussed, the end of the world that was coming immediately, which it has been for thousands of years. But boy, they love to throw that fear at you. So to set the scene, we had our hellfire sermon. I hadn't stood during the invitation. We were at my uncle's house. They had talked about how the end of the world was imminent. I get in the car in the back seat and I look out the back window, and there's a ring around the moon, which now I know is nothing. It's nature. It's a beautiful thing. But at that time I didn't know, and I thought for sure that was a sign, because the Bible says there'll be signs and wonders in the sky. And I was sure. And then a shooting star went by. And that was it. Full-blown panic attack. I was 12. What in the world had I done to go to hell? I never even got off the farm to do anything. I couldn't even bike down to the neighbor's house because I lived in the country.
Yeah.
I developed panic attacks, nightmares, night terrors throughout this whole ordeal. And granted, I didn't have near as bad as some I know. Some, have been abused and physically, sexually, whatever. I was not. As a matter of fact, my dad was very pro-family. He stood up for me. When the preachers, after they kicked me out, the preachers wanted him to shun me, he actually got into church work himself because he refused to. He said he didn't care if his daughter murdered somebody in cold blood in front of him. She was still his daughter, and she was going to sit down and have dinner with him.
Wow.
And so, kudos to my dad, because he loved his children more than anything in the world. And he had his faults, of course, and I hold anger towards him, but there was never any doubt of his love, ever. And so he got in church work, put on repentance for all that, for standing up for his daughter. Because a few years after I got expelled, my little sister got expelled too. So not only did he have one heathen daughter, he had two. And I'm not going to say any names because that would be horrible to do, but there was a deacon in the church when my little sister got expelled. So it was me and Julie both said her name, my little sister, out of the church. And one of the deacons here went up to my dad and said, "You must have really done something bad, and you must have really not been following God's law for two of your children to leave church." And that hurt my dad really bad. That bothered him so bad. And now, at this point in time, that particular man has two children outside the church. And he treats me a lot different. He's very kind. He's very, because we meet out in the public, and we, it's a small town, so we run into each other quite often. He actually comes into the place I work often and eats, takes it to go, but he eats there, and he's kind and he's gentle and he's very friendly. And it crosses my mind, like, I wonder if he remembers saying that to my dad. And I wonder if he thinks about that when he looks at his own kids. And at this point, I'd love to dismantle religion, of course. It's my main goal.
Just religion in general?
Yeah, just religion in general. I'm not really kidding, but I'm kind of kidding. Anyway, the things they're allowing in the Holdeman Church now are the exact things that I got in so much trouble for. Caused so much division between me and my parents. So many arguments that did not have to happen. So many hard feelings that shouldn't have had to happen. And they just keep going on like it's okay, and it's not okay. It's not okay. I deserve, at the least, an apology. We all do. Anyone that got any kind of grief for anything they're allowing now deserves a heartfelt apology. I don't like, I don't know. And they always throw that bitter and offended out there at us. Well, you're bitter and you damn right. I am bitter and offended. I'm very bitter because I lost years between me and my parents. There's hard feelings. There was disappointment in my parents' eyes at the end of their life because I wasn't a Mennonite. At the very least, an apology is deserved. And like I said, I don't remember much of my childhood. There's issues there that I started therapy and then I quit for a while. I really need to get back into it because there's issues there that I don't understand or know because I don't remember hardly any of my childhood. Until I was about 12 or 13. Then the memories start, clicking in. But like I said, as far as I know, I didn't have any other issues with church except for the fact that I didn't belong there. It was like trying to fit a round peg into a square hole. It was never, ever going to work. Ever. Now, my older sister, I can't imagine her not being a Mennonite. Fits her like a blouse. Is great for her. And I'm happy for her. I hope she's very happy. But it wasn't for me. And I don't understand why we had to be punished for deciding that this life isn't for me. I just wanted to leave and go on, and they wouldn't let me. Now there was some things done during the period of say 15 to 18, probably 16 to 18, that I think went beyond normal questioning. Like, I was probably 16 the first time it happened. I was a wild child. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I'd skip youth. We'd have a youth group meeting. I'd go so everybody would see me, and then I'd sneak out and run to town and hang out with the town boys. Or, I mean, there was a couple of times we traveled from Fairview to Enid to go to like an old people's home to sing. And I'd travel along with them, but when we got there, I'd take an exit into the mall and go to the movies. I was a wild child. I'm not going to lie, but you know what? I wasn't any worse than any other teenager. My mom used to look at me and she'd poke her finger at me. And she goes, I hope. And she'd always be crying when she did it. She goes, I hope you have a daughter and she acts just like you. And it was said with such venom that when I found out I was having a girl when I got pregnant, I was scared to death. I thought, oh my God, she's going to be a damn heathen. But it turns out she's just like me, and she is a delight. So was I. I wasn't. Sorry. Oh, sorry. I guess I'm still working through this, but I wasn't a bad girl. I just didn't belong there. So anyway, the first time the preachers cornered me, after it was on the Sunday afternoon, they told me to come back to church because it was revivals. God, I hated revivals. Anyway, Barb, you got to come back to church and we need to talk to you. And what can I do? I'm 16. I'm under my parents' rule. Of course I have to go back. So, I can't back out of this preacher's meeting. I could usually escape the preachers. They'd head towards me after a meeting in the morning or, night revivals, whatever. And I'd skedaddle. I would skedaddle and I would stay 2 steps ahead of at all times. Well, I couldn't escape this time. So I go up to church and it's 2:00 on a Sunday afternoon. And there's just like 4 or 5 cars there and me. And I go in there and I'm in a little, at that time, they tore this church down, built a new one. But at that time, there was little Sunday school rooms off of the main area. So I was in one of those dark little Sunday school rooms in a chair with a semicircle of 5 middle-aged to old men facing me. And you've been there. Legs crossed, socks showing, about 3 inches of skinny white legs showing. Their dour faces staring me down. Yeah. Looking me up and down at what I'm wearing, my hair, because my hair was always wild. I got to the point where I was wearing a little bit of mascara, a little clear nail polish, where they were looking me up and down, and I sat down, and they proceeded for an hour and a half to interrogate me on my sexual activity. There was none. It was all perceived in their head. They thought, well, this girl, she's wild, she's fast, she has to be. I'd barely had my first kiss and snuck that in after a youth group meeting. But they wanted to know where that boy had touched me, if his fingers had been inside of me, if he had ejaculated. I didn't even know what that word meant at this point. It was an hour and a half of just question after question along these lines. Did he touch your breast? Did you like it? Did he put his tongue in your mouth? Did you like it?
Yeah.
And let me tell you, you know, people say, did you tell your dad? Why would I tell my dad that? Why would I, at 16, go home and tell my dad, you know what they asked me? God, I was humiliated. I didn't want anybody to know. Until church that night, when I got with my boy cousins. We were all a tight-knit group because they were just as wild as me. And turns out they also had meetings asking them if they ever had relations with animals, if they masturbated, what they thought about when they masturbated. And we thought it was funny. You know, we're 16, 17 years old. We thought that was hilarious, these dirty old men, God. And now I think back, and had my daughter been in that room with those 5 men, I'd be in prison. Gladly. But we had nobody to stand up for us because the people that should have protected us were the ones doing it.
Yeah.
My mom and dad are both gone now. Honestly, if they were still alive, I wouldn't be here because I had enough respect for my parents to stay quiet, to let them live their lives with their faith the way they want. But they're gone now. So all bets are off. My dad never knew. Never had any idea what his beloved preachers put us through. And that went on for the whole 2 years I was on repentance. Every time they had a visiting preacher, every time somebody would see me uptown and report back, because I had spies, they knew my every move. I couldn't get by with nothing. And it didn't help that my best friend was a preacher's daughter. But that went on. I can't tell you how many times I was cornered in a little room with a man old enough to be my father, questioning me about things that he had no business asking me. I would have never told my parents.
Yeah.
And like I said, there were those that had it much, much worse than I did. But trauma is trauma, and hurt is hurt. I just happened to be one of the lucky ones that got by with minimal damage, I think. Mm-hmm. I say minimal, but I sit here halfway through my life and it's still making me cry. So what's it? I don't know. Sorry, I had to gather my thoughts there for a minute, because it is hurtful. It is hurtful that church. I was only a member for 8 years, but it affected so much of my life and so much of my self-worth and so much of the way I viewed the world. And the whole, I remember the first Sunday after I got expelled, I was still living at home, so I was still under my dad's rule, so he's like, you're going to church, And that's the end of it. So, okay. So I got up and I went to church, and just so happened they got invited out for dinner, which is a normal occurrence, as you know, after a Holdeman service. You usually get invited out for dinner somewhere, or you host a dinner. Well, we happened to be invited out to a very pious couple's house. And I didn't know anything about anything. I didn't know what shunning involved. I didn't know. Well, they all sat down for dinner and there's no place for me. And I was like, well, that's kind of weird. And the lady of the house said, well, you can't fellowship with us. Your table's in the kitchen.
This was
And they
after
had
the
put me.
this was
This was
after
a
the
week
actual
Yes.
expellation. Okay.
It was like
At 18.
at 18,
Okay,
barely. I had turned 18 in October, and this was a couple of weeks after I turned 18.
Sure.
I got expelled, and then this was like a week after, then like the next church service after I got expelled. And there was my little TV tray and my little folding chair in the corner of the kitchen by the trash can, with a little bowl of mashed potatoes and whatever else. I remember the mashed potatoes. I don't remember anything else because I love mashed potatoes. And I was like, well, I'm going to eat those. And then I'm skedaddling. And that's exactly what I did. I ate my mashed potatoes and I got to go. I'm leaving. And my dad didn't stop me because I saw his face when he realized I had to sit in the kitchen. So he didn't stop me.
Yeah.
And he never asked me to go to another dinner again. And Dad never once, not one time, did he ever try to set me or my sister at a different table. My best friend, however, was not treated so nicely because she left at the same time I did. She went back very quickly, but she used to have to sit in the basement with leftovers to eat. So it wasn't just me, you know, everybody went through that, but that was my experience. Mm-hmm. It's very hurtful and demoralizing and dehumanizing, I think is a good word for it, to be sat away from all your peers, all my friends.
Yeah.
And to go in the kitchen by the trash can to eat. So I did.
Yeah.
You know, if today me had been confronted with that, it'd have been a whole different outcome. But I was pretty beat down and pretty, you know, I wasn't as strong then as I am now by any means. Had the Barb of today been confronted with that situation, it'd have been a different outcome. But you know, after I left and I decided if I'm going to hell, I'm going to make it worth it. Well, I did. And then I met a man about 8 years later. And at first it was fun because we were both drunk all the time, raising hell, doing this, doing that. And then I got pregnant. And it wasn't so fun. It was a very abusive, very humiliating marriage. We got married when I found out I was pregnant with my daughter. And then I had a son with him. So both of my children are from the same man. And he was very abusive. And in my head, I'm like, well, I chose this life. I deserve it. It's my own fault.
Yeah.
Which goes back to the you're not worthy. You're unlovable. Yeah. And then when it got so bad that I thought this man was going to kill me or my children, because that was his favorite threat. He was going to take me and my children to my parents' house, skin me alive, cut me up in a million pieces in front of them. That was his favorite threat. And I believed him. And it got so bad that I thought, you know what, this man's really going to do this. So I grappled for a good 6 months with leaving him because the Bible says you don't leave. And I was still in that mindset. I still believed at that point. And the Bible says you don't leave. The only reason you can leave is for adultery. Mm-hmm. And then I thought, the Bible says if I do leave, I can't get married ever again. I can't have love ever again until he dies. Well, he's too mean to die, which is true. He's still alive.
Yeah.
So I stayed. I stayed and I stayed and I stayed a lot longer than I should have, simply because of the indoctrination of religion telling me I deserve that. I chose this. Had I chose to stay in church, had I chose to follow God, wouldn't be here. It's not my fault. But I thought it was. But I have two beautiful children that I raised far, far, far away from that mess. And like I said, that's my biggest accomplishment in my life, is that generational curse is done. It's over. We've broke it. There will be no more Mennonite passed down, and passed down. We're starting our own lineage, and it's going to be a much kinder and gentler and tolerant and loving than what I experienced.
Yeah.
And I told myself, Barb, you're not going to cry tonight. You're a tough old broad. Apparently, I'm not near as tough as I thought I was. But I don't know. It just, it is so disheartening to think of what could have been, you know, instead of what is. Because I've struggled. I have struggled my entire life since divorcing my kid's dad, with finances, with being a single mom, with mental health, with all of it. All of it. And I can't blame it all on the church, but boy, did it give me a good head start on it.
Yeah.
Because I could have made better decisions. By all means, I could have. But I was out to prove them right. Y'all think Barb's a heathen? Watch this. Oh, that was the devil. I really wasn't. I was just a normal teenage kid, but according to them, you know, and that really did heal a big, huge part of me, is when I realized, when, you know, my mom used to tell me, and my dad told me quite a few times too, you know, I hope your kids act just like you. And the day I realized, my daughter is 24 now, just a free spirit. She has, I don't know, 15 tattoos, piercings. She's got bright pink hair. She's gorgeous and fun and perfect. And she's just like me. She's my mini me. And it hit me one day. My God, Mom, look what you've done. And my daughter is just like me. And she's a goddamn delight. She is the joy of my life. The joy of my life.
Isn't it amazing the way that works when we appreciate our children for everything they bring to the table?
How much different would my life have been had I had that?
Yeah.
But I solace myself by saying, you know what? I might not have had that, but my daughter did. And she knows. She knows she is loved, and my son also. They know they are loved beyond anything in this world. And they know that they have a mom that will support whatever decision they make. Yeah. And I will do anything in my power to support and make their life better. And that healed such a big part of me when I realized that I wasn't some kind of little demon child. I was just a normal teenager doing normal teenage things. I wasn't evil. I wasn't a bad kid. Yeah. And I'm telling you, I had to sit with that information for a whole day just to process it, just to let it go round and round in my head, to realize it. I was a good kid. Mm-hmm. I just
didn't fit there. I just didn't belong there. And I wish my mom and dad could have seen that. And maybe they did. I don't know, but they didn't act like they did. And growing up Holdeman, feelings are, I don't know in your family, but in my family, feelings weren't talked about that much. I don't hardly ever remember my parents saying, I love you, or I'm proud of you, because pride was a sin. You can't be proud of yourself. You can't be proud of your kids. That's a sin. So I didn't hear I'm proud of you very much. Ever, really. I heard, I hope you get a daughter and she acts just like you, but I didn't hear I'm proud of you, because they weren't.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't. And I've come to grips with that. And that's okay. It's not okay, but I have to be okay with it. But my children know. My children know how proud I am. My son is a beautiful creature, soft heart, slow to anger, just a wonderful, wonderful being. But I'm so proud of him. I'm so proud, and I make sure he knows it. I tell him, I'm proud of you. I love you. I support you. Things that I never heard.
Yeah.
And so I guess in a way, growing up the way I did made me a better parent.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was bound to determine that neither one of my kids would hear or experience what I did. And they haven't. They're healthy, well-adjusted adults. And I am super proud of both of them.
Yeah.
I just wish I could have heard it at some point, I don't know. And I don't understand why, as a Holdeman, because my dad got in trouble. My dad was a heathen apparently too, because he got in trouble more than once. He got in trouble one time because the preachers came over after revivals. You know how they say, oh, it's your turn. We'll be there after church, whatever. Well, my dad was a very big, he loved like antiques. He loved like rocks. When we went on vacation, he always brought back a big rock from wherever we went. And he had all this stuff sitting in a corner in the living room of their house, He had an old Indian tomahawk that he had found on the riverbank. He had an Oklahoma, like a stagecoach chest that he thought a lot of. Just some cool stuff. And that man got in so much grief over that. They were idols. Get rid of all of it. Get rid of all of it. This cool stuff you want us to get rid of, which he didn't. He hid it. When the preachers came over, well, we better put this up, put this up, put this up. I don't understand. And then he got in trouble again one time for having too much pride in his family. How is that even a thing? How is that even a thing? He got put on repentance because you have too much pride in your family. What? I don't get it. How can you have too much pride in your children? I don't understand.
No.
I don't. And now, there's no one left in my immediate family in the church except for my older sister. And like I said, she's married. She has 3 boys. They're all grown up. She seems to be very, very happy. And that's all I want for her. If that's what makes her happy, more power to her. But I should have been able to leave after I decided this isn't for me. I should have been able to just walk away with no repercussions. Okay, so it's not for you. That's okay. Go ahead. I shouldn't have had to deal with, and it sounds so selfish, but you know what? I am a little selfish. I shouldn't have had to go through all the extra trauma, the extra hurt, just to live my life.
Right.
But boy, I used to pull some stupid shit in church. Let me tell you that. One time, that's my favorite story to tell because I was so proud of myself for getting by with this for so long. I could have been 16 or 17, and it was Revivals. God, I hated revivals. I found this tiny little transistor radio at the store, and it had the tiniest little earbuds to go with it. And I thought, this will come in handy. So I bought it. Sure enough, that thing fit, excuse my language, but it fit right between my boobs, that little transistor radio. And those little earphones would fit, when a girl goes to church at the Holdeman church, you have to wear this black scarf tied underneath the chin. Well, those little earphones, that wire fit right under that scarf, right into my ears. I spent 6 months. I didn't hear a word of church. I nod my head. I was jamming out. I was nodding my head. Everybody's thinking Barb's a changed girl. She had taken this sermon in. Oh, hell no. I was singing Baby's Got Her Blue Jeans On,
Yeah.
I was having a good old time. I was listening to the countdown, and I was so proud of myself for that. And then my dad found it. Oops.
Yeah.
I used to we'd have to go to Sunday school, and we'd go in for the opening, and then in the old church you'd come out, and when you went downstairs there was a door to go outside right off of there. Well, I'd come down, and right when all the other girls were going downstairs to go to Sunday school, I'd sneak out that door and go sit in my car and listen to the radio until it was time for church. And then I'd sneak back in with my little transistor radio. I didn't hear a sermon for 6 months, I swear to God. Oh, I was proud of myself. I got grounded for quite some time, though.
Yeah.
A long time. It was worth it. I didn't care. I'd do it again.
Yeah.
I was a little wild child, but I didn't deserve all of the crap that went with it. Not at all. So anyway, that's a synopsis of my little story. We don't really have that many Holdemans left in my church anymore. I mean, my family anymore. There's I have one uncle on my dad's side. And one of his kids is left in church. And then I have, I think, just one uncle on my mom's side. And none of his kids are in church. So, I mean, we're weeding it out.
Yeah.
But, and I couldn't be happier. I couldn't be happier about it. But a lot of the beliefs are still a lot alike. A lot of the same fundamental beliefs that the Mennonites believe are still held by my family. As far as being very religious, very straight-laced, very just biblical, and it goes along with being in this part of the world too. I'm in the Bible. I'm in the Bible Belt, so it's to be expected. But then you throw a little bit of that Holdeman influence in, and it's twice as bad. But I'm not real close with any of my family anymore, so I got my kids. That's pretty much what I have, and that's okay. It's okay. I'm okay with that. Like I said, I think healing is a continuous, fluid thing. I don't think you ever get to a point you're like, okay, I am healed and ready to go. I don't think that's ever going to happen for me. I think I will wrestle with this forever. Because I'm not going to lie, I identify as an agnostic now, because I do believe there has to be some kind of greater knowledge than we have. I mean, we're dumb species. I mean, look what we've done to the world. There's got to be some greater design, but I don't believe it's the God of the Bible by any means. I think the God in that Bible has been distorted and perverted and used for man's own, own purpose. And but I will not lie, there are still times, because there's been a lot of talk about the apocalypse, how, the end of the world has been predicted over and over and over and over. And every time before I can rein it under control, that little 15-year-old girl inside me goes, oh, fuck. We're in trouble. But then, but then my logical brain takes over and says, okay, that's not right. That's not true. But so I still struggle with that 30 years later. I mean, what kind of bullshit is that?
Yeah. Yeah.
That is that indoctrinated into me, that even after all this time and all this introspection and all the I've looked at my beliefs upside down, sideways, backwards, inside out, and I've come to the beliefs I have very honestly. But that indoctrination is still so deep that still there's moments I'm like, ugh.
Yeah.
What if I'm wrong? And I think that's sad. And I think it's sad that anybody has to go through that. I don't think it should be that way. I'm so glad my kids don't have the hang-ups I do. I'm so glad. I know I've said that more than once, but that is my biggest accomplishment is my children. I'm so proud of them. And I'm so proud of me for raising them as a much kinder, tolerant version of what I got to grow up with. I held the tears to a minimum. I'm pretty proud of myself.
Yeah.
Because it's funny, me and my nieces have this little saying called Weedles weep. Because we do. Weedles like to cry. We're a very emotional people for sweeping things under the rug like we do.
Yeah.
But my dad was a very teary man. So I guess I inherited it, honestly. But that's a little bit of my story. The damage the church did me. Like I said, I'm still working on healing a lot of it. And if they want to call me bitter and offended, more power to them, because I am very bitter and I'm highly offended with the bullshit they caused.
Yeah.
It didn't have to be that way.
That's something I've always thought. I mean, since I've left, is when I left, I was determined not to be one of those bitter expelled people. And then as I watched people do the things that we weren't supposed to do, and now they do them, it does start to cause bitterness. And it didn't take me very long to realize why people who leave are bitter.
Exactly.
They get shunned for, sometimes they're living better lives than the people in the church, and yet they get shunned just because their membership is not there.
Right. I mean, I can tell you, and these are just little things. These aren't even big issues that matter. These are little things. I got in so much heat for this little blue jean jacket I used to wear.
Yeah.
It was the late 80s. Denim was all, everywhere. I looked cute. I'm not going to lie. I was a cutie patootie in this little jacket. And you had little buttons back then, that had different sayings on it, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I had them all over the front of my jacket. I would roll the sleeves up. Oh, I was cute. And I got so much grief. Then I'd pair them with this pair of really cute pink high top Converse.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, socks were all the rage. They had sock stores. My daughter doesn't believe me when I tell her that, but yeah, we had stores just for socks. And so I'd get some pair of mismatched socks, layer them, whatever, and I'd make my own look.
Mm-hmm.
All I wanted was to stand out. All I wanted, and I still like that. I still like to be the center of attention. I don't know what it feeds inside of me, but that's why I'm a waitress. I hold court every day. I am the queen. But I got in so much grief over that. And now I can go on any given day, see a little Mennonite girl wearing a little denim jacket with her cute little boots and her mismatched socks. And I'm like, do you know how much grief I got for exactly what you're doing? Yeah, how many fights it caused between my parents and I. How many nights they just begged and begged and begged for me just to be a normal Mennonite girl, and I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So I think we are allowed our bitterness and our offendedness. Absolutely. We deserved it. We earned it. And that's what I'll tell them every time somebody's like, well, you're just a bitter and offended ex. You damn skippy I am. You damn right I am. I'm highly offended that y'all are pulling this crap to this day. I'm highly offended that I got sat in a room with 5 middle-aged men at the age of 16 questioning about sexual things that they had no right to talk to me about. And they never, nobody ever, they pay no, there's no punishment for that.
Right.
I don't know if it's still going on, but I know it happened a lot when I was that age.
Yeah.
Yeah, you bet your ass I'm bitter and offended. Because had that been my daughter in a room full of 5 middle-aged men, like I said, I'd still be in the pen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely abhorrent behavior from people that should have protected me.
Right.
And instead chose to victimize me instead. And not just me, my friends, my cousins, anybody that was that age. You know, I have a cousin that's an ex-Mennonite, and she has a story that would put mine down to shame.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the things that were done to her and said to her, and just gross. Just gross.
Yeah.
So yeah, I am bitter and offended, and I'll wear it proudly. I don't even care.
Yeah.
I don't even care. And I don't know, a lot of people hate Taylor Swift, but I'm a huge Taylor Swift fan. And this latest album she has out is so healing to me. I've listened to it over and over. There's a line in one of her songs that says, "You wouldn't last an hour in the asylum where they raised me." And sometimes I'm like, God, it feels like I was raised in an asylum.
Yeah.
And I relate to that very much. And I'm on TikTok a lot, and I'm not the only one. There's a lot of other deconstructing Christians who have taken her latest album and said, you know what, this resonates with me. I feel this in my soul. Because there's a lot of deconstructing Christians out there. I had no idea. I thought, I was an anomaly. I'm not.
Yeah, there's a lot from all denominations. Yep.
Yeah. Huge community. They can't take my TikTok. Man, I've learned so much. There's a guy on there for anybody that listens to this. If you're struggling to understand some of the things in the Bible, or you are scared of the book of Revelations, or you need some explaining done on the book of Genesis, anything like that, look up Dan McClellan. He is on TikTok, and he is a Bible scholar, and he has read the Bible in its original text. And that man has helped me heal so much of my spiritual trauma. I'm just saying, if anybody's out there listening and they need some clarification on anything biblical, look him up. He is an amazing, amazing man. And I look him up every day just to see what brand new stuff he has to teach me, because it's amazing. It will help you a lot. I used to be scared to death of Judgment Day, of the rapture. Turns out the rapture is only like 150 years old. It's not even biblical. I had no idea. But you know what? While I'm saying 150 years old, that reminds me of something else that made me angry. I don't know if I learned it from you or from Caleb. I think it was Caleb posted something one day about how John Holdeman, decided he was going to make this new church and all this stuff. And he only did it in the mid 1800s. This church is less than 200 years old. And look at all the damage it has caused in that 175 years, whatever. I was so angry. I was angry for 2 days when I heard that, because I guess I'd never stopped to think about it before. I'd heard all the stories about John Holdeman and all this stuff, but to actually think that this church that's less than 200 years old has caused so much damage and so much carnage in its wake, it made me so mad. So mad. And not only did that make me mad, but it made me mad because this man made this church out of guilt. He was guilty because he got his girl pregnant, and it knocked something loose in his brain. What? Oh,
yeah.
At
Yeah,
least if it was, at least if it was, Catholic, at least there'd be centuries of this. But this is a brand new religion. Oh, it makes me mad just thinking about it. Ugh.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things with that. There's an episode coming out. I'm not sure how long yet, but Caleb interviewed Dennis Goosen, I believe, and he's a
Okay,
historian.
I think he's on.
And he's researched a bunch of stuff about all of that. It's really interesting. Find out, John Holdeman. It took him over 20 years to really gain a following. So it was just him, his wife, and his father or father-in-law, and a few others for like 20 years. It wasn't like he just took off. It didn't really take off until he found the Russian immigrants.
That's what I've heard. They were poor and looking for something to grab onto. Yeah. But I thought maybe did I read right where at the end his father-in-law or father, whichever it was, even said, "Nah, I'm not doing this." I that's what I thought, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I know his mother refused to join and never did.
Was it his mom? Okay. Yeah. Maybe that's where I'm getting confused. Maybe it was his mom that I read that rejected his teachings. And I'm just like, and on that note, my mom came from a long line of abuse and addiction. It is very pervasive in my mom's side of the family. But my mom was a very big believer in the sign of the moon. Like, she would cut our hair by the sign of the moon. Dad would come in and ask how to, what was a good time to plant crops, when to work cattle, stuff like that. And she always had an almanac set beside her table, always. And she would look it up, a sign of the moon. I quit smoking. I tried 6-7 times, quit smoking, until finally I was like, you know what? I'm going to try mom's way. Got me an almanac, chose the day it told me to, and boom, quit. The moon is very powerful. And I know a lot of people don't buy into that, but we're 80% water, and the moon controls the tides. How can we not be affected by the moon? But anyway, that's for another day and another discussion. But it makes me wonder how much of my mom's lineage, the women before her and the women that came before her, how much of their teachings, how much of their knowledge of things like this did we lose? Because once you become a Mennonite, that is a no. Mom and Dad could have gotten in trouble with the church for believing like that, because that's astrology or, witchcraft, whatever you want to call it. So how much of my mother's lineage am I missing out on? I mean, I know about the moon. I have an almanac. I consulted a lot, but how much more could there have been? Could I have been taught what herbs to use to make medicine, or things like that, things that were lost a long time ago when religion entered our lives. It's just frustrating sometimes to think about stuff like that, because my mom was a little different when it came to things like that, because she would, she told Dad when to cut his cattle and his bulls or whatever, and when to plant the garden, when to plant the corn. And my dad actually called my mom Doc Wedel, because she had a solution for every illness. She had some kind of knowledge that was taught to her from the generations before her. So how much more of that was lost? Because it wasn't a lot. She wasn't really into all that, but she knew things. So how much of that was lost? It's just sad to think about. I don't have a culture. I don't know about you. I don't have a culture. Right. I have a church. I have a cult. Yeah. That's all I have. I don't have a culture.
Right. Yeah, I've thought of that before. Yeah.
It's very disheartening, and it's very sad, because there's no way to get it back. Everybody they're all long gone. My mom's gone, my grandma's gone, and my grandma and grandpa Nightingale, my mom's mom and dad, she was pregnant 20 times. I mean, this lady had a rough life. She had a little, she was abused. She had some mental illness going on. I don't know. I just, it's sad to think about what could have been different had this religion not infiltrated our lives. It's sad to think about. And I try not to think about it because I'm like, you can't change it. You can't go back and change things. You can only move forward. And so my children, they are being taught what I know. And hopefully, and my daughter, she's even expanded a little bit. She's a little bit witchier than I am, if you want to call it that, witchy or whatever it is, And so hopefully we'll get some of that culture back, but I don't even know what we've lost.
Yeah, right. I was just thinking when you were talking about your right after leaving the church, the wild years. I was wondering how much you if you've thought about that, like think that it's the result of maybe not having developed your own morality.
And that's a very good question. Like I said, I have been toying with the idea of going back to counseling because there's so much that I don't know about myself. There's so much. I mean, why did I react like that to being kicked out and shunned? Why was that my reaction, just to go out and raise all kinds of hell? I don't know. I didn't know who I was.
Right.
I had no idea of self-worth or self-love or any of that. I was just thrown out. Go. As I like to say, on the mountains bare, that's where I was.
Right.
And it was a lot of wild living. I'm not kidding, Waylon. I did some shit that probably should have killed me. I was drunk for probably 8 years solid. I'd drink myself into a stupor. I got a DUI. I'd pass out and I'd get up and I'd do it all over again. I mean, there's huge chunks of things that happened in the world history that I don't remember because I was drunk.
Yeah.
And and maybe that was part of it. Maybe I was just searching for my own sense of right and wrong and making bad decisions along the way. I don't know. But like I said, it hit me one day because my brain is very ADHD. It runs constantly. It's got about 40 windows open at all times. And so, I was thinking one day about the whole, when they hand your soul over to Satan thing. And I'm like, even though I know they have no power over me, they don't own my soul. Nobody owns my soul but me. I understand all that, but still, like I said, there is power in the spoken word. So matter of fact, the way I believe, I'm not going to call myself a Wiccan or a pagan because I probably identify more as a pagan than anything, but I like to I like to work on manifestation. I like to work on, going inside your head and trying to figure things out. And that's one of the first things I learned is the power of the spoken word.
Yeah.
Is so powerful to speak what's inside of you. And when they speak that over a young person that has no idea of who they are or what they want out of life or what they're even going to do next week, because all we've known up to this point is all we've known. We're not worthy. We're not capable of making good decisions on our own. We're not lovable unless God says we're lovable. We are all born sinners. A brand new baby is already sinful. Blah, blah, blah. All this stuff poured into their young, impressionable brains, where you take it from somebody that's supposed to be leading you, so you believe it. It soaks into your brain. It soaks into your consciousness. It soaks into your pores, and that's the way you believe. So when you got a little 18-year-old girl that's had no exposure to the world except for this town of 2,000 people, where all the only people I knew in that town were the boys I liked to chase and the girls I liked to emulate.
Right.
That's all I knew of the outside world. That's it. So you take a girl that's very sheltered, that's very indoctrinated, and you say over her, I hand your soul to Satan. There's a certain power in that. Whether Satan is real or not, it's the whole idea of taking somebody's psyche and saying, the only thing you're good for is eternal damnation. You're ruined.
Right. Yeah.
So you send this 18-year-old girl out into the world with that thought in her head that, what else can I do? I'm already headed to hell. Let's get it on. So I did. I hung around with the lowest of the low. I drank as much as I could possibly drink without killing myself. I popped many things like they were Skittles. I smoked weed. I started smoking cigarettes. I was screwing. That's terrible. I'm sorry. I was sleeping with whoever I wanted to sleep with. I was living the life that they told me I was going to live.
Right.
Because as well as I do, when they expel somebody, they're full. They tell you, they tell the rest of the sheep that all this, you're going to be a drug addict, you're going to be an alcoholic, you're going to be a whore, you're going to do this and you're going to do that. And I made all of those predictions come true.
Right.
Not meaning to, but I did. And sometimes I hate that I did that, because I'm like, oh, I just proved them right. But you know what? You spoke that word over me. You spoke that curse over my life. How fucking dare you? How dare you? Simply because I chose not to believe the way you believe. You thought it was your right to say out loud with your mouth, that is only supposed to do the holy and wonderful and good things, that you think I'm not worthy of anything but eternal damnation. How dare you? And the man that did it is dead now. And I can't say I shed a tear when I heard that, because I did not. I'll be straight up honest with you. Didn't bother me a bit. And that may be callous, and that may sound really bad, but that's the way I feel. I didn't feel anything. Matter of fact, it's not just between you and I, it's going to be between you and I and whoever listens to this, but I find it hard to feel anything for anybody. Besides my kids, of course, as you can tell, I get very emotional talking about them. But as far as anything else, I find it very hard to let myself feel anything. And that's something that I need counseling over, because I don't know why that is. Why? My uncle right now, I have an uncle that's very close to death.
Yeah.
I haven't shed a tear yet. I don't know why I'm this way. I don't know. But I know where it started.
Yeah.
I know where it started.
Yeah. Just, can you hear me for sure?
I can hear you.
Okay. I changed a setting and I wasn't sure. Something I have wondered about in regards to all of this, I've noticed it's kind of a pattern of people who leave. A lot of people develop an addiction. And I think it's all dropping out of that high control environment. Suddenly there's nobody to tell you what to do. And actually something really interesting that goes with that is, in some of the tests they've done, some of the same areas of the brain handle addiction and religious experiences. So I kind of think that people leave, they drop out of that environment, that control, they don't know what to do. And then, as far as, like I said earlier, the moral compass, I've developed a far greater morality since I left the church because I didn't have to develop one. They told me everything to do. So I didn't need to figure out. So I didn't need to figure out what was right for me. I just did what they said.
Yes, that's a
And not
very
always
good
what
point.
they said.
That is a very good point. There was no
Yeah.
thinking involved in it.
Right. Right.
They told you, and then once you're out and you have to think for yourself, it's a very scary. Very
Yeah.
scary. I think a lot of what plays into addiction also is we needed something to grab onto.
Yeah.
We needed something to, we'd had the church and our community there, and all of a sudden it's gone. So you've got to have something to take that place.
Yeah.
Because a human need for companionship, for community, it's a basic human need. And when you get that all yanked out from under you, plus, like you said, your morals that they gave you that are no longer yours. I mean, what are you going to do? Where do you go? What do you do? And a lot of my drinking was self-medication I was drinking to forget, drinking to, and I know you probably feel the same, and anybody else that's been expelled like this, there's that undercurrent of knowledge of how much you've disappointed your folks. Nobody wants to be a disappointment to their parents. Nobody does. Yeah. And knowing that you did something on purpose, selfishly, that cut your parents to the quick, that's not something you want to think about. That's not something you want to acknowledge.
Yeah.
And so, I started down that path of self-medication, of forgetting. I don't have to think about it. I drank so much. As a matter of fact, my older sister got married. I'd been out of church probably 3-4 years when my older sister got married. And I know I was there. There's pictures of me, my little sister took, but I was drunk. Yeah. I don't remember. I was a bridesmaid in my older brother's wedding, who never joined church. My brothers never joined. I was a bridesmaid. There's pictures of me there. Don't remember a thing. I was drunk. Yeah. I was self-medicating every day. And then it just turned into a habit, mm-hmm. And I think, a lot of people have these high moral grounds of, I left the church because I didn't agree with this doctrine, or I didn't agree with the one true church doctrine, or I didn't agree with the racism that's in the church, or the sexual abuse they cover up, whatever. There's a lot of people have a very high and moral reason for leaving the church. I did not. I wanted out because I wanted to be me. And I knew that church at some point would kill my spirit. And I'd just become a cookie cutter wife, just like all these other Mennonite girls. And I was not going to do it. I've always been a little feisty. And I don't have a high ground for leaving. I don't have a high moral compass for leaving, because that's not why I left. It's not because I didn't agree with the one true church doctrine. I just wanted out. I just wanted to be me. I wanted to wear my cute little tennis shoes and my cute little denim jackets and not get in trouble for it. I wanted to cut my hair. I wanted to wear my mascara. I wanted to do all the things I wanted to do without the shackles of the church holding me down. So I don't have a high ground of why I've left. Yeah. And I mean, bless the people that do, because I admire that, standing up for something you believe in. I did not. I just wanted out. Yeah. That's all. And then once I dated this boy that I really, really fell in love with, and then he broke my heart, and it was all downhill from there. I drank everything under the sun. I did. Yeah. And which wasn't good for me, because I don't know if you've ever, been in a cycle of drinking, but the more you drink, the worse the hangovers are. The worse the hangovers are, the worse the panic attacks are. It's all a vicious circle. Self-medicating is horrible for panic attacks because it doesn't work. Yeah. And bless my mama's heart, she had to come over to my house multiple times, 6:37 in the morning, because I'd wake up hungover,
thinking I was dying, and she'd have to come and take me to the emergency room because I was in full-blown panic attack.
Yeah.
But she did it every time. She'd come over every time. Like I said, I've never once, not once, doubted my parents loved me. I know they did. I know they did. My mom carried a lot of baggage with her from her childhood, from the way she was raised, but she loved me the best she could. I have no doubt about that. And my dad, like I said, loved his family more than anything in this world.
Yeah.
But I can love someone and still hold anger for them in the same breath.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
and that's something I need help too. You know, getting over the anger towards my parents for allowing a 10-year-old child. I just wanted to be like my mom and my sister. I didn't know what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to be honest, I still don't know what I'm doing, but at least it's not in a church anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking about that, you know, people, as is always the case when you tell your stories, people take it apart a little bit. And I was thinking, you know, why, you know, people could ask, why did you want to forget? But like you pointed out a little bit, and I've been thinking about that. Why would you not want to forget when the only tribe you had told you you're useless, worthless? Yeah,
Mhm.
it's so much harder if you haven't ever been through that. Even I guess for me, even the knowledge beforehand, when I was thinking about it, even the knowledge that they would all be willing to discard me was difficult before it even happened.
Right.
I knew they
Right.
were capable of discarding me.
Uh-huh. Because
Yeah.
you've seen it happen to other people. I'm
Yeah.
sure. I watched people before me get discarded and shunned and handed over to Satan. I knew it was coming. Absolutely, I did.
Yep.
But to me, at that point in time, it was either that or stay and allow them to kill my spirit.
Yep.
And like I said, I'd like to think there was some high moral ground I left on, but there's not. It wasn't for me. I would have never been happy there. If I'd have
Yeah.
stayed, I'd have probably ended up married to some Mennonite man and had 3 or 4 kids, lived in a big house, probably had money, because you know all the Mennonites have money. But at what cost?
Yep.
At what cost to me, to my psyche?
Yeah.
And you know, and if people want to pick up my story, that's absolutely fine. I'll answer every question anybody has, because what I speak is truth.
Right.
This is what happened to me. And another thing I had to learn in my journey of healing is you can have a family or church per se that has so many different members in them. Like, say my family, I have 4 siblings. There's 5 of us. Each one of us has a different story and a different experience of our parents.
Mm-hmm.
We all experienced different things from our parents, if that makes sense. And it's the same in a church. We had basically the same experience, but your experience is vastly different than mine. My experience is vastly different from the next person. We all have our own story to tell, and we all deserve a voice. We all deserve to have our story told.
Yep.
And if people want to come at me and say, well, this doesn't make sense and this doesn't make sense, I know it doesn't make sense. Yeah. Why do you think I'm still seeking therapy at this point in my life? Because it doesn't make sense to me either, but it is what happened.
Yeah. Yeah, I had somebody contact me recently and say that, well, they work at a like a horse farm, you know, for a therapeutic experience or whatever. And they said that was one of the things they were very interested in this podcast for, was the fact that we gave a space for stories to be heard, told and heard. Yeah.
I think it's been a long time coming. And I think there's so many of us exes that just move on with our life. We just we take our story and we put it inside of us,
and we live our lives, and that story never gets told, and those feelings never get acknowledged, and that eats away at your mental health, your physical health, your relationships with everybody in your life. I mean, that's one thing I've learned on my journey of healing is you have to voice your hurt. You have to let it, you have to give it space to heal. And I think this is a wonderful idea. I think it's been a long time coming, and I think there's a lot of us out there that deserve to tell their stories, whether they're not so traumatic like mine or the most traumatic there may be. We all deserve a space to say, I was wronged. This church wronged me. And this is what happened. These are the repercussions of what happened to me. This is how it affected my life. My life could have been so different had this church not decided that I was worthless.
Right.
And I don't know what the answer is to anybody that, like me, I don't know. Like I said, I'm on a healing journey. It may take the rest of my life. I'll be healing until eternity, but I think there's also beauty in that journey. I think there's also beauty in discovering that the person I am today, and I saw this quote somewhere on the internet sometime. It said, you become the person that you as a child needed. And that was so important to me because as a child, I needed this. I needed love and acceptance and somebody to be proud of me and somebody to love me completely, whether, not love me because God has forgiven me or love me because I'm part of some special church that God has approved of. I needed somebody to love me.
Right.
And so I became that person. And in turn, I became that person for my children.
Right. Yeah. Well,
I'm very thankful you guys started this podcast, and I hope more people come and tell their stories. And I hope it's a place of healing, even if it's a beginning of a healing journey for someone. There may be somebody out there that is my age that hasn't started healing, because I didn't even start until my kids were grown. I was in that abusive marriage we were together 10 years. I finally got up the courage to leave. And then I was a single mom.
Yeah.
I didn't get any support from him financially, emotionally, nothing. And so I was busy with my kiddos, and now they're grown and they're happy and they're healthy. And now all of a sudden I have all this time where I'm like, wow, I'm pretty messed up. I really need to focus on me and figure out why I am like this.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at. That's why I didn't start my healing journey until just a couple of years ago after my last divorce.
Yeah.
I started, doing some introspection, some meditation and all that stuff. And I've really evaluating my beliefs. And so it's never too late to start healing. It's not. I don't care if you're 30. Yeah. I don't care if you're 40, 50, 60, 70. It's never too late. It's never too late. And it will only bring about good. It might be painful, and it might make you cry, and it might make you even isolate for a while, because it did me. I've lost a lot of friends, and I've lost family and members over this journey I'm on, but it's so worth it. You are worth it. Everybody is worthy. I don't care what church you were born into. I don't care what family you are worthy simply because you are.
Yeah.
You don't need a big God to love you. You don't need a God to save you. You don't need someone to say, I died for you, so you're worthy of it. No, you are worthy because you are. Period. Yeah. And I think they do a great disservice to people to tell them that they are not.
Yeah.
Because that does a lot of damage to somebody's psyche. Yeah. That's my take on it anyway. I'm not the smartest girl in the room, but which is another thing. Another thing. Sorry, I'm going to turn on the light here. Which always bugged me is that stupid 8th grade education.
Yep.
Oh, what a hindrance to my life. And granted, I could have, once I left, I could have went to college. I did get my GED. I could have went to college when I was too busy getting drunk and partying. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
But that's there's so many little little creeks off this big river that is the Mennonites.
Yeah.
I mean, you could talk about lack of schooling. You could talk about the marrying cousins. You could talk about the sexual abuse that gets swept under the rug. There's so many facets.
Yeah.
But that's a little of my story anyway.
Yeah. Well, we're actually almost an hour and a half in, and I think that's pretty good. Is there anything you really want to get said yet?
You know, I just want to reiterate to anybody that might hear this. If you have a fear of the rapture, of the end times, of God is going to come down in big cloud and take all his elect away and you're going to be stuck here, please, please, please do some research. It's all a big lie. You don't have to believe that. You don't have to go through panic attacks thinking of the day the trumpets will sound, because it's not going to happen. It was a made up, man-made belief. Do your research. And if there's anybody out there that needs anybody to talk to at any point in time, whether you're freshly out or you've been out for 60 years, I am available. I will talk to you. I don't know much, but I have broad, hairy shoulders, and I will listen to you cry all day. All day. And I just want to thank you guys for letting me come on. And this is the first time I've publicly spoken out against the church, and I was very nervous, but
you did really well.
It was a great experience. And
Yeah.
I encourage anybody out there that has a story to tell to do it. And like I said, one more thing, I don't care if you're fresh out. I don't care if you've been out 20 years. I don't care if you've been out 60 years. It is never too late to start healing. Never. Counseling is a wonderful place to start. I know the Holdemans say counseling is not good. Find you a good counselor, one that knows religious trauma.
Yeah. Yeah.
Never too late to start healing.
Yeah. Well, okay. There's one thing I wanted to tell you. You said that people didn't tell you that they were proud of you, but I've known you for several years. I'm proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you. That is very meaningful to me. Thank you.
I've been able to observe your kids a little bit, see some of their creativeness.
Oh,
yeah.
They're wonderful. My son taught himself the guitar. He writes his own songs. He plays his own music. I love my kids. The greatest accomplishment of my life. And I thank you for your kind words so much. I think we actually met on TikTok. Yes,
we did.
And Dan McClellan on TikTok will help anyone out there with any kind of questions they may have about the Bible. I'm a huge fan. Just saying.
Yep. Okay. Well, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Waylon. It was a pleasant way to spend a Monday evening. I appreciate it.
Sure.
And I'm, like I said, I'm always open for questions. If anybody out there listening has any questions or wants somebody to talk to, look me up. I'm pretty easy to find. I'm a social media queen. Not really. I just spend a lot of time on social media, but I would be available to anybody that needs any kind of listening or help. No problem.
Yep.
Thank you for listening. It is an honor to connect with our guests, and we wish the best for them as well as our listeners. Remember to like and subscribe for more episodes. Our People can be found on all major podcast platforms as well as YouTube. If you are interested in sharing your story, please contact us at ourpeoplepodcastteam@gmail.com. Thank you.